Welcome to the Week 2 Football Playoff Podcast. I'm Connor Morissette alongside Keith the Molder. Keith, thank you for joining me as you do every week. So pretty much Week 1 in the playoffs was what we envisioned in Division 3 and Division 2, Division 1. There were a couple upsets. University won over Bell,
right.
12-5 game, so congrats to University. And then there were a couple of 8-9 wins, but really it was as we expected. Now we move into second round games and the first round of the Open Division. And here's where we'll see some more surprises, I think, and really a lot is up in the air.
Right.
And we'll predict D1 and the Open and then touch on some D2 and D3 games coming up. But it's going to be a wild Friday this week.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that you also have, like, the second round of D1, but then you start with the Open, and there's a lot of volatility there for sure. The 4 or 5 game Fairfax, I mean, anything can go.
It's going to be very exciting for sure. So to quickly brief you on what we're going to be touching on, so I want to recap last week quickly, give out a couple of game balls as we've done throughout the year. Then I want to preview this week for D2 and D3, and then finally pick and preview D1 and the Open Division. This is going to be a big week for the Open Division because it's Week 1, and remember, we didn't touch on it last week, so
right.
I want to give you a lot of Open Division coverage, so that'll be coming your way towards the end of this video. So boom, D3 and D2, Santee and D3 put up 56 points in a win over Van Nuys, and then in D2, Eagle Rock scored 50 in a win over Hollywood. So the contenders were doing what the contenders did best and got off to great starts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for both those divisions, it seemed like the better seed was blowing out the other seeds. One upset though that I want to touch on is Kennedy pulled out the win over North Hollywood. That was unexpected there. But yeah, most of the other seeds they ended up winning. A big matchup for sure. I guess we'll touch on it a little bit later. But Torres taking on Verdugo Hills.
Yes, that is. You're going to beat me to the punch. That's one of the games we're going to watch. So yeah, we'll preview that in a little bit. So then all the top 6 won in D1, which we expected. But on our staff, we did a preview bracket on Twitter, and we all picked Jefferson to beat Arleta, but Arleta ended up beating Jefferson, and that was really the first good look that I had at Arleta all season, and I got to give them credit. Only 2 or 3 losses on the year so far. They've won 8 games, and E.J. Gable for them has been tremendous. I don't want to go through his stat line because he's going to get recognized in a little bit. He was a fantastic player, but I'll just say this, over 200 rushing yards and over 3 touchdowns. So
wow.
he was tremendous in that game, and that was a battle, remember, against I don't even know what to call him, receiver, running back. He sometimes plays quarterback. He's also a safety, Romeo Dobbs for Jefferson, who was fantastic in that game as well. It was such a great battle between 2 stellar players. I really enjoyed taking that one in, and unfortunately, Dobbs' team came up a little bit short, but I mean, it wasn't for a lack of an effort from him. He had 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a couple hundred rushing yards as well. So just a fantastic game, and it was nice. It was a Thursday at 2 p.m. kickoff, very early, and I got there, and it was a great game to take in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's as we said in last week's podcast, it's hard when you have 2 great offenses to know who's going to win, because it really is about the defenses limiting the offenses, because all these offenses are so loaded, especially in that bracket as well. So clearly Arleta showing who's boss.
And as we mentioned, there were a couple upsets, but the overall general thoughts from the Week 1 in the playoffs where it went as expected. So Keith, let's move over now to the game ball segment where we highlight a couple of the top players from last week. I have 2 on my list. I know you have 2 as well, and we'll let you get to it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so my first game ball goes to the Dorsey Dons quarterback, that being Makai Ellis. He had a fantastic game, a huge win, 63-0 over Sylmar. He was 10 of 13, looking at completion percentage, 169 yards, and then 2 touchdowns. Him coming back from injury, it just showed how good this team can really be when they have a solid quarterback. We saw Isaiah Smalls, back up, even though he's a tight end. So now that they have him back, I think they can make some waves there in that bracket.
Yeah, and we're going to touch on it in a little bit, but they play at Palisades next. That's the game of the week for me. I don't care if it's open, D1, D2, D3. That's the game that I would like to be at most. Unfortunately, because of the TV show, I don't think I'll be able to get there, but hopefully Alex, our other guy, can get to that one, because that is probably the best game, I think, of the week.
Right, and you spoke about Pally right now. Second game ball has to go to Dakota Hamilton, the running back for Palisades. Fantastic week. 56-6 win over Canoga Park. He rushed for 205 yards on 21 carries and 3 touchdowns. So Dakota Hamilton as well as Makai Ellis, you get game balls from me.
Yeah, Keith, I shouted out Dakota on Twitter in the Pally official football Twitter reached out to me. They said Dakota pounded the rock and took what the defense gave him. So that's the analysis there from, I think, Coach Hyde, and it's great analysis. That's exactly what happened. Over 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had a great game. So my game ball is the first one. I already kind of gave it away a little bit. It's E.J. Gable, and he was tremendous in that win over Jefferson. 242 yards, 4 touchdowns. Without him, our lead is not even in that game. So shout out to E.J. Gable. I think he was probably the cream of the crop this week, the best player. But right behind him was Jonathan Murphy, the quarterback for Westchester. 23 of 32 for 294 yards, 3 touchdowns. Then he ran the ball 13 times for 91 yards and a score in a win over Grant 38-14. So fantastic offensive performances from both players. So that's Jonathan Murphy, the quarterback for Westchester, and then E.J. Gable, the running back from our lead. Those are my 2 game balls. Congratulations. So before we get to Open Division stuff and Division 1 predictions and analysis, Keith, I wanted to touch on with you. You're kind of the 8-man guy this year. I know Anemo Robinson looks like the team to beat an 8-man, so that's, I think, where they'll be crowned champions probably on Saturday. But hey, let's see. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I mean, clearly Anemo Robinson all year long, huge margins from them. One of the best scoring offenses in the section. They played North Valley Military Institute 58-0. So just goes to show you how loaded Anemo Robinson is. But that said, Sherman Oaks CES just as loaded, 54-8 that score over Bright Star. So they're playing in the championship this Saturday. I will be there. It's at Fairfax High School. Should be a good one because both of these offenses are very good, and if it's a theme, you know, whichever offense is better should win that game. I think it'll be Anemo Robinson.
That'll be exciting for sure. Let's move on to the game to watch in Division 3, and that's Verdugo Hills at Torres. So these two teams played the first game of the year against each other, and Torres won 48-16. But I think both teams look a little bit different now.
Right.
I mean, Taekwon Gilmore looks as good as ever. He had 3 touchdowns in a win against Jordan last week in the first round of the playoffs. But I think Verdugo Hills is kind of coming together. They scored 40 points or more in their last 3 games. So I see this as being a slugfest. I think the winning team will probably have to have 40 or above. Verdugo Hills' offense has showed that they can score. Obviously, with Taekwon Gilmore, Torres can score. But that's the game that I've highlighted because it's the 4-5 matchup, and both of these teams are very talented on offense. It's anyone's game.
Really, and the fact that Gilmore is essentially all that they have on offense. I mean, they don't throw the ball hardly. I think Verdugo may, try to key on that, put maybe 9 men in the box, really. So I think that Verdugo also has more of a balanced attack than does Torres. And so, as you said, it'll be a slugfest. Whoever scores more points will be the victor.
In Division 2, 2 games I want to get to really quick. The first one, Reseda and Granada Hills. That game is at Reseda. I think Granada Hills playing in the West Valley League, they might be able to put up more of a fight than people would expect. You kind of saw that with University and their win over Bell. That just the league that they played in, they might not get the recognition they deserve because they're getting blown out against some really good teams. That's kind of what happened to Granada Hills. And I think they might be able to give Reseda a little bit more of a game than people expect. I'd still like to take Reseda in that game. I think Mike Martin, the quarterback, and Jelani Ellison are a little too much, but that's an interesting game that I'm watching.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the days of John Elway are long gone, from Granada Hills. So perhaps they get something on the board. But that said, Reseda, they've shown week in and week out that their defense and offense is just too good. I see them also winning.
And then the best game in D2, Roosevelt at Huntington Park. A lot of people would probably say, Roosevelt, what's going on with them? But Huntington Park, they've lost to Roosevelt. Roosevelt beat Huntington Park at Huntington Park already this season, so that's a 7-2 matchup with HP coming in at 2. But the fact that this has already been a game, you gotta imagine Huntington Park, they definitely want revenge, but in the back of their minds, I imagine they're saying, crap, we're the 2 seed. We should, on paper, beat the 7 seed, but they've already beaten us this year. I think that's going to be a fantastic game as well. Look out for Isaiah Zepeda, the running back and linebacker for Roosevelt.
Right, and yeah, as I said last week on the podcast, I think that Huntington Park is going to be upset. I think that they're going to come out. Perhaps it's going to be this game. Roosevelt, I think they come in with a lot of firepower. They're very hungry, and I think a lot of people, they're doubting them because they're the 7 seed going up against the 2 seed. Huntington Park, their offense all year long has just been unreal. But I don't know. I think I smell an upset.
Second round of Division 1 comes up on Friday, so no upsets in Division 1 in the first week. There are 4 games, so the slate is 8 Arleta at 1 San Fernando. Then you have 5 El Camino Real at 4 Garfield. That's going to be a close game. The game of the week for me, 6 Dorsey at 3 Palisades, and then 7 Westchester at 2 Southgate. So let's kind of preview these games, give you some thoughts, and then pick them. Let's start with Arleta at San Fernando, the 8-1. San Fernando, I think, is going to win the game, and they're the 1 seed, so that's not exactly a bold pick. But I think Arleta is going to hang around. E.J. Gable, he showed everything he could do against Jefferson. He's having a fantastic year, the junior running back for them. He got the game ball earlier. San Fernando's offense is a little bit too much for Arleta's defense, but I think this is going to be kind of like a 40-24, not really over, but 2-score game for the majority of the second half. And Arleta can score points, so they have a chance, but I think San Fernando, with their 3-headed rushing attack, will just be too much for Arleta. But I think that game's close, and some San Fernando fans, I think it's going to be a walk in the park. I'm saying not so fast, but the team should still win.
Right, yeah, absolutely. San Fernando, I think that their defense is better than people expected, and obviously Arleta, they scored a ton of points last week, and I think that they're still going to be able to put up points on the board, but I think San Fernando, their defense, just too good for them.
In the second game, 5 El Camino Real at Garfield, who's 4, and when we picked the brackets, Alex took El Camino Real, you took El Camino Real, I was the one who took Garfield, and I'm going to stick with that pick. I think Garfield, they're just a little bit they're going to be a little bit too much for El Camino Real on offense. I don't think the El Camino Real offense can score enough points to keep up with Garfield. Last week they played 2 pretty bad teams, let's face it.
Right.
And Garfield put up 43 against Taft, and El Camino Real put up just 30 against Hamilton. And so, it's tough to have legitimate takeaways from that, but I just think the Garfield offense is a behemoth, and the El Camino Real offense is okay. Both defenses kind of cross each other out, so I'm going with a better offense, and that's Garfield.
It's really tough for me.
It's a tough one, for sure.
Especially for because El Camino Real, they've been close and against so many good
and they're
teams.
On a heater. They've won a million games in a row.
Right, yeah, and so I don't know. I think that momentum, especially in the playoffs, come playoff time, I think that's going to be key for them. But going into Garfield, they have a fantastic home presence there, so there's going to be certainly a lot of fans on the Bulldogs side. I don't know how it's going to affect El Camino Real, but it should be a great game.
So we're split on that one. That's the first split. 6 Dorsey at 3 Palisades. Game of the week, as I've said. So Dorsey's won 5 straight. They're hot. I don't think Palisades matches up very well with this Dorsey team. That's kind of my thoughts with this game. And I want to give Palisades credit, give them a shout out. They were a little frustrated on Twitter that we overlooked them, and they've been so great to us all year.
Right.
But I just think Dorsey right now, they're angry. They are mad that they're not in the Open Division. They think that they can win Division I and go on to the state tournament. They didn't like the way they got off this year, obviously, because they just performed so badly in the non-league games.
Right.
And I think they're going to go into Palisades and take their anger out on the Dolphins. Dorsey's won 4 in a row, and kind of like the Garfield El Camino Real game, I don't think that Palisades matches Dorsey on offense very well. And they're just going to be able to put up a ton of points because Makai Ellis is back. They have Juwan Collins, they have Charles Mincy Jr. running back, and then Isaiah Smalls at tight end. That's a loaded offense. Palisades defense, they specialize in the front 7. I think Makai Ellis will have a good day passing the ball.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think, as we said, in the game ball segment, having that quarterback back for the Dons is so crucial for them to have Isaiah Smalls as a weapon, because he really changes that whole offense, being able to block, but then also go out for a pass if need be. And they have 2 great rushers. I think that the passing attack of Palisades isn't up to snuff with Dorsey's defense. I think Dorsey's defense is fantastic, maybe a little bit underrated. So I see it being a really close game, but I think I see Dorsey ultimately pulling it out.
Look out for Dion Bascom, a member of the secondary for Dorsey. I think he's going to have a great day, just a freak athlete and a guy who can return kicks and is also capable of picking off Palisades for sure. He had an interception against Silmar. He's a fantastic player. All right, Westchester at Southgate. This was the toughest game for me to pick.
Yeah.
Because both offenses are loaded. Jonathan Murphy missed a couple games earlier in the year. For Westchester, he's the quarterback. He got a game ball earlier, but he's back. Southgate, we know they can score. There's question marks with the defense. I think because it's at Southgate, that makes the difference. And I think the Southgate offense is probably just a little bit better than Westchester. But it wouldn't surprise me if this was like a 42-38
exactly.
or 42-40, really tight game. And if Westchester pulls it out, I would not be shocked.
Yeah, I mean, the way that Westchester's been playing as of late, they've proven, they're kind of like El Camino Real. They've kept it close. They've stayed with it with a lot of really good teams. But I think that Southgate, Ernie Garcia, and that offense is too good throwing the football. It's going to be a high-scoring affair for sure. But the Southgate defense, they have a lot of expectations coming into a game where Westchester, they have, kind of that dual threat offense where they can throw it but also run it really well. So I see it being Southgate, but you're right, maybe a 5-point, 4-point game, really close, maybe a touchdown at the end.
Every Division I game is going to be fantastic. So those are our picks. Agreed on every game, but El Camino Real, Garfield. To the Open Division we go, and really, it's the moment everyone's been waiting for. These 8 teams, the best in the city section, according to that computer's algorithm over at calpreps.com. So the 8 teams, it's Narbonne, San Pedro in the first game, which is the 1-8, Fairfax, Birmingham at Fairfax, I should say, in the 5-4. Birmingham is 5, Fairfax 4. Venice 6 at 3, Carson, and then Banning 7 at 2, Crenshaw. Let's start, Keith, with San Pedro at Narbonne. These two teams met earlier in the year. It was a 57-7 win for Narbonne at San Pedro. This time it's at Narbonne. I mean, we don't really have to break this one down too much. It's going to be a Narbonne easy victory.
Oh, yeah. Easy is probably an understatement right now. I think that, for Narbonne to be able to go and win the way they did it against San Pedro early in the year at San Pedro, that was saying enough. But now they're, number one, in the playoffs, so they're going to be firing on all cylinders. They're at home. I see them scoring maybe over like 60. And I think it's a blowout.
And Coach Manny Douglas loves to, first play from scrimmage, they went deep against San Pedro and it worked. He puts the pedal to the floor, and he's going to do that against San Pedro. Okay, Birmingham at Fairfax. I'm taking Fairfax because I think Fairfax linebackers have been so good this year. I think they make the difference. Both teams are good on offense. Both teams have solid defenses, but the Fairfax linebacking core led by Daryl Carrington is elite in the city section, and I think the fact that it's at Fairfax makes a big difference. I'm going to be honest, I think Venice is better than Birmingham, and the fact that Fairfax already beat Venice at home is another indicator to me that Fairfax is going to win, so that's my rationale. I'm taking the Lions.
Yeah, I have to take the Lions as well. I mean, talking with Scott Harris, his leadership ability is clearly there, and he's probably one of the most polished passers in the city section by far. Talking with him after that win, the final, their league title in the Western League, it's clear that they are going for a ring. They're not going to be challenged by Narbonne. They seem, Scott Harris telling me that we're going to beat Narbonne. We're going to beat Narbonne. I can guarantee it. Almost like a Joe Namath type of thing over there. But that said, something that kind of concerns me, Kevon Johnwell. They have a very balanced attack with their running attack and then also passing with Scott Harris, but Kevon Johnwell against Venice, he injured his elbow or shoulder. He was down. Seems that it's not going to be a horrible injury, but still very concerned. So I think that they do beat Birmingham. Birmingham, I don't think, can compete with them on offense. But going into that next round against Narbonne, I think it's a little bit, it's very tough for Fairfax, against a team like Narbonne.
Yeah, from my experience covering high school sports here in LA, when the teams who are ranked below the other teams call out the bigger teams, it hasn't worked out well for them, but we'll see if Scott Harris can change that. But, I mean, hey, we're looking ahead a little bit there. Maybe Birmingham pulls out the win, but we're both taking Fairfax. Venice at Carson. This was the toughest game for me to pick, but I'm taking Carson. Venice can score. They've scored with pretty much everyone this year, so that kind of made me question Carson, because whereas Carson's weakness, offense, they can't score as many points as other teams can. But here's the X factor for Carson. It's a kid going to San Diego State, Danilo Fuimano. He is known as a safety. That's where he's going to play in college, but he's been running the ball a lot for Carson, and it's been really working well for him. And so mix in the transfer from Banning at running back, and that's a very dangerous group. So I think they'll be able to score enough to compete with Venice, but whereas Carson's best performance is at, it's on the defensive end. And so I think Venice, yes, they'll probably score some points, but they haven't really faced a defense like Carson. I think Carson's defense is probably a little bit better than Fairfax, who they played last week and only put up 14. I don't like the numbers on Venice. They only have like 30 players. Carson has way more depth.
Right.
Taking Carson, taking the Colts.
Yeah, it's really tough for me to pick against Bryson Tremaine. We always give him a shout out, and he's fantastic. I'm not really sure that this Venice defense can really stop Carson. And Carson, a three-headed monster there. Jaja Bellinger doesn't really throw the ball very much, but obviously their running game, probably one of the best in the section.
And then the last game, I agree with what you said there. The last game, Banning at Crenshaw. It's kind of like that Narbonne game. I think Crenshaw is going to roll. Here on my notes, Crenshaw is the better team on both sides of the ball, and I agree with that. I mean, they have two great offensive players in Solomon Hassan and Rayshawn Williams, so I'm taking Crenshaw. And then, again, you hate to look ahead, but I'm going to look ahead for a second. Crenshaw hosting Carson in the second round of the Open Division, or I guess the Open Division semifinals, you'd say. That's like the Dorsey Palisades of next week.
Right,
That's gonna be great.
Yeah, that will be a fantastic game. Just talking about this one though, Crenshaw and Banning. Crenshaw, as you said, they're better on both sides of the ball, but I think that Crenshaw, at least what I saw against Dorsey, seems to have one of the better defenses in the section. Obviously, maybe not as a whole, they're more collected than I think Dorsey is, even though Dorsey has Dion Bascom, some of these
Timothy Mosley.
Yeah, exactly. Some of these really good guys. And, also talking about Narbonne, Logan Taylor, all those guys in the secondary. But Crenshaw, over Banning, that's an easy pick for me, considering that they have these great LA High transfers. Solomon Hassan, we saw him, great game. Quarterback play is fantastic. I see them rolling, but looking forward to next week. It'll be interesting to see who you pick, but I mean, Carson, Crenshaw, that's a great game.
And I guess that's the cliffhanger. You'll have to tune in next week to see who we pick. But this has been the Week 2 SCPI Football Playoff Podcast for Keith DeMolder. I'm Connor Morissette. If you see us at your local high school, feel free to say hi. We'd love to chat you up, talk football, or whatever sport you want to talk about. But we'll be back next week with some semifinal picks in D1, D2, D3 in the Open Division. It's all starting to heat up in Los Angeles City section football, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back.